I'm used to the fact that, oh my God, you're from Israel. So I would get the looks, I would get nasty comments. Oh yeah. Once when I lived in London, a friend of mine from Switzerland invited me over for dinner, and she would lived in a UN type of house of many different nationalities, and everybody gathered. And this lady from Sudan was sitting in front of me, and at some point she started shouting at me that I murder people, and I had to leave.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Eternal Optimist podcast. I'm your host, Matt Drinkon, and welcome. It's going to be an incredible episode today because today we have a world-renowned strategist with us who actually has chosen to not be on podcast until this moment. So we have a first-time podcast. Yes, this is her first time, but she's got a large following and she's super successful in business, but she's never done podcast till today. So we have a real treat, dear listeners. We have a real treat. My guest today is none other than Dina Vince. And I'll spell that for you. Dina is D-I-N-A, Vince, V-I-N-C-E, as you can see on the advertising. But Dina, we've already had a great conversation. She's phenomenal. This is going to be a great conversation. So get ready today, team, for this conversation. So I'll ask Dina first, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm great and so excited to be here. So thank you once again for this opportunity.
Oh, I'm excited to be with you. And I was doing my research before we started the show, and I noticed that you had an interesting post on LinkedIn yesterday, and you had some kind of allergic reaction or something. So I think now is the perfect time for us to be talking after a challenging day. So Dina, can you tell us in the last 24 hours, what's been going on in your life in the last day?
I'm used to be knocked down and then get up very quickly and just run. And being a strategist, one of the core principles in my work, and this is what I always talk about, is the fact that, sometimes the plan goes to shit. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this word.
Oh, I love your accent. We don't normally cuss, but it's okay. We'll bleep it. So go ahead.
Oh, yeah, should have asked, you see. So, I just went for a regular hair salon appointment, and developed a very strong allergic reaction to one of the materials used. But thank God it was next to a clinic. So I went into the clinic calmly and said, I really need to see a doctor now. And it took a few minutes, and then the doctor saw me, and she told me immediately that you have a systematic allergic reaction and you need to get a shot of steroids. And I realized that I'm not 100% myself, so I lost a little bit of even the reasoning, and I said, okay, just give me a minute because I need to be able to, again, I always say, don't just run on a command. Ask why. Why are we doing it? What is the purpose? I find myself doing exactly that. And I stepped aside and I was alone. So I tried to call a few of my close people. And one friend picked up the phone on a video because I didn't even recognize my face. But I was thinking, because I'm not thinking straight, maybe I cannot see my face properly. Anyway, she told me, yes, your face doesn't look good, and you need to take that shot. And coincidence or not, but she went through exactly a similar episode, and she told me exactly why it needs to be done, and very calmly explained the logic behind it. So then I went back to the doctor, got the shot, and it took an hour, and then I got so much better. And today, just like I said in the beginning, I had before we started that it reappears again. So, but I took a pill. So
Well, I think you're already living kind of some of the values that we talk about on our show.
Yeah.
That whenever life throws you a lemon, we make lemonade, and we do the best we can. And
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
thank you for still being with us today. And by the way, those of you watching on YouTube, we don't see any signs of any allergic reaction yesterday because Dina is just beautiful and we love her energy. So there's that. So definitely check it out on YouTube.
Thank you so
Um,
much.
but Dina, can you give us just give us a minute or two, just some context, like where you're from, what do you do for a living, what are some of your interest hobbies? Just give us a minute or two of just set the stage for who is Dina Vince.
So I am originally from Vilnius, Lithuania. Well, it's a small country, but a very beautiful one, very unique, like the pearl of Europe, which hasn't been discovered yet. I used to say that a lot, but now not so much because many more people are realizing or trying to find that hidden gems. So Lithuania always pops up. And moved to Israel when I was 7, grew up in Israel, and made my first independent steps to adulthood in London. I moved to London, lived in a beautiful area in St. James's Park. I used to laugh next to the Queen, the neighbors with the Queen. And yes, I know. I was very lucky. I met my landlady in a sauna in a gym, and I remember that day very well because I, as you know, to find a flat it's never easy. And when I found one, a month after I was noticed to move out because there were some problems not related, like with the subletters. And I remember that I couldn't move because I was so devastated by the news. And I was sitting on a bench outside of the gym. And then for an hour, convinced myself to go. Eventually, I stood up and I said, okay, Dina, don't go to work out, just go to the sauna. I went to the sauna and I met my landlady. Yeah, I know. Wow. You see, again, get up and go. Yes, and I came back to Israel 14 years ago. Many people would say, oh, how crazy you should be to go to Israel, and trust me, I mean, you have to be a little bit crazy to live here, and even crazier to be able to understand. And I love Israel, and I also, see. So especially nowadays, a lot of Israelis that want, and I take a lot of donate in different initiatives to bring unity to this area. Okay. So, and somebody asked me, I mean, why did you come back to Israel? And I said, well, my immediate family lives in Israel, and if they were to live in Antarctica, I would probably go to Antarctica. So you see, so again, it's not black and white, the choice. Okay. And I live here right now with my immediate family within walking distance. So very close. Yeah, I know. And
excellent. Well, what do you do for fun? What are some of your interest, passion, hobby?
I'm so guilty because I remember in one of your emails, the first line, it says that you're very committed to have a balance and in life, and I'm struggling with that because I'm almost possessed about my business, and I do, and I work 6 days a week because in Israel the working week is Sunday through Thursday, and I do have clients as well in the rest of the world. So yes, I work 6 days a week. I work out 6 days a week. You can say that my workout is my hobby, but it's also a lifestyle. Yep. And extremely passionate as well about just, the core universal physics law. I meditate as well, and try to be conscious.
We have a couple things in common, and I think a lot of our listeners do some type of mindfulness practice. So I love that you do the meditation and a commitment to what I would call health span, which is living into later years, God willing, and being able to still remain active. So, like you, I and a lot of our listeners, we're committed to some form of exercise. So, love to hear that. So let's dive into the deep into the pool if we can. First question I'd love to ask you. You've already shared a challenge already with yesterday, but let's go back in time, and I'll give you just free range to go anywhere you want to. You can go to yesterday or even back until birth. So anywhere in your past. What was an experience that you had in your life that was incredibly difficult for you? So we'll start with that and unpack it. So the floor is yours, Dina.
My trainer asked me that question just a few weeks ago, and I was totally taken aback because normally this is not a typical question to be asked, right? We're not often thinking about those challenges. I mean, we want to think about how we want something or achieve something.
Yeah.
And then I looked at her and I said, well, what do you mean? I have a long list of impossible things and it started early on, since when I was 12. But you're asked about the most difficult ones, so probably it would be...
Well, let's start with 12. If something happened at 12, let's start there and just move forward in time. So what?
So at 12, I really wanted to get a job. And
okay.
And my parents and just thought that it was just a kids talk, and but in my neighborhood, a mother opened a store for her son with disability, and she took a year off from her banking job, and she wanted to provide a way for him to make a living. And yes. Even though he was a person with disability, but the way she was bringing him up was absolutely incredible. She would say always, "You are not with special needs," and it was about, well, I'm now 41 next week, so 12. You do the math, and back then, not many people would have awareness around people with special needs or with disabilities. So she said, she sent him to normal schools, and I'm telling you, I mean, if you would put this guy in Harlem, he would approach somebody and tell him, "Give me your gun," and then we'll carry on with his life. Yes, this is the type we were talking about, and he's genius, numbers genius. He was a stationery shop. And anyway, when they opened, I walked in and I said, "I want to work here for free." And she hired me on the spot. So I would come over the weekend and help with, organizing the stuff in the shop. And she would pay me. It was still not a lot, but I remember with my first paycheck, I went and bought special into a delicatessen shop and bought lots of sweets for my family.
Awesome.
So yes, and
so that was your first job. Your first job was going in there and working. And so
actually,
what did you learn
in Lithuania when I was 6? Because
6?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Again, it depends how you call it, but I made friends with ice cream kiosk lady, and back in the day, Lithuania, which was part of the USSR, would make the best dairy products across USSR. So Lithuania would be known for the quality of its ice cream and chocolates. And to this day, I can close my eyes and feel the taste in my mouth.
Yes.
So I was addicted to ice cream. I really loved ice cream, and it cost 20 cents, 20 kopeyka, the Russian ruble cent.
Okay.
And because I was a frequent visitor, I made friends with the lady who worked at that kiosk. And one time she let me in. And we were selling ice cream together, and she was teaching me how to differentiate fake money out of not fake money. And my payment was ice cream. So that was the first job.
Awesome. So does this ice cream tradition, does this hold true today? Are you still an ice cream enthusiast?
Oh,
the look gives it away. What is your favorite ice cream nowadays?
Chocolate, always chocolate. But I don't eat it now. Unless it's I don't know, like once, yes.
I hear you. I sometimes will go and get a Ben & Jerry's ice cream and get the fish food, or the half-baked are the two I like to get for Ben & Jerry's.
Ben & Jerry's are great, but Haagen-Dazs is much better.
Oh, okay. Well, then maybe I'll look for the Haagen-Dazs later today. Thank you. So at 6 was your first job. At 12, you wanted to get a job, and you went and worked. My question is, what did you learn about patience and empathy and people working in a store with a young boy with a disability?
It's such a great question. Thank you for bringing this up. And I'm thinking a lot about it today. And in fact, I work about this initiative with one of my clients that founded an NGO that combats polarization. And, I come from a diverse background. I speak 4 languages, and even in my work, I'm paid to give an advice. I don't come with an answers. I'm not really interested in the answers. I come with questions because of the way I think, And sometimes I need to translate a sentence to 4 languages in order to fully understand what the sentence means. So that gives a different perspective. And since I remember myself, I would be always curious about the other side. And in fact, I was also very curious about for example, the American election system. I didn't know anything. I didn't understand what it means democratic, and I didn't understand the whole system. Republic and so on. The blue and the red, I didn't know who was who.
Yeah. It can be very confusing and frustrating, believe me, but yes.
And my introduction was 2015. And and I don't know if politics is off limits or not.
It's not off limits at all. We'll talk about anything here. So please.
So, and I will complete the circle to that question as well. I was identifying even though I don't have the right to vote in the US, but you know that the election in the US affects everybody in the rest of the world, including myself. And and I remember when it really affected me when I was 7, when we moved from Lithuania to Israel, and a month later, a war started with Iraq. Kuwait, Iraq. And
yes, right. Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this, but there was an agreement between Israel and the US. Israel was taking the hit, but it didn't respond. And Israel got the hit not because Israel was involved in this war. I'm not a historian, so please don't quote me, but from my general knowledge, US gave a lot of money to Israel, and I was living in a town next to the Patriot, which is the American Iron Dome. I don't remember from that period of time. I just remember when finally we went outside and I saw the blue skies, and so basically, So to give you just a context of how America's politics affects even a 7-year-old child. And so I was introduced to this. I was really curious, and I thought that I'm Democrat. And I still was curious to understand, I mean, what is the conviction of the Republican? And I hear in media a lot of statements like against Trump, which were also very valid. But I was thinking, how is it possible that there is a clear division and half of the people are still supporting the other? So what is it that drives them to think that they should support him? And
good question.
that was the initial question. And then I started digging into it. And I have to say that what Trump was saying, again, that brings the inner child in me, that little girl that remembers that effect of that war. And one of his statements, if I'm not mistaken, was, America cannot continue with that pace of being the world savior. Let's just focus on our domestic and our country.
Mm-hmm.
Again, so this is, even now, I'm not suggesting that or the other, but I saw the logic as well. And today, unfortunately, and there are many reasons, and it affects as well, Israel in the media. And sometimes I would be in different forums. I work internationally. I'm a member of different groups, communities around the world. And sometimes I'm used to the fact that, oh my God, you're from Israel. So I would get the looks, I would get nasty comments.
Huh. Really?
Oh, yeah. Once when I lived in London, a friend of mine from Switzerland invited me over for dinner. And she would lived in a UN type of house of many different nationalities. And everybody gathered.
Okay.
And this lady from Sudan was sitting in front of me. And at some point she started shouting at me that I murder people.
What?
Yes. And I had to leave.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And next to her, there was a guy who was Arab Israeli. And we got along with him. We had a lot of respect one for another. We managed to have a conversation, but it got so heated up, and he even tried to, cool it down, but it didn't matter what I said. So basically I had to leave, and my friend obviously would feel so bad, but that was probably one of the extremes that I would experience. So it's not foreign to me that people would have an opinion just because of the label that you are wearing, essentially, right?
Totally agree. And I feel some of that sometimes nowadays too. And maybe it's for similar reasons, and maybe a little bit different. One of the similar things we might share is we both come with a lot of questions. And when I ask questions that by my standard of thinking, which I think is pretty open and pretty curious, when I ask questions such as, why am I being ostracized because I don't want to take a vaccine shot?
Yes.
Why are people yelling at me because I've been healthy my entire life and I don't want to take this shot, and yet I am being demonized because I don't want to do that? That might be an example of me having some of that stuff hitting me. I'm just asking questions, and if I don't take the narrative and just live by it, like I want to ask questions about both of our presidential candidates in the U.S. right now.
Yeah.
I want to ask about why is the best quality candidate we have in his 80s? Why don't we have someone that's in their 50s or 60s? Or maybe even 70s. They could be young. So I have questions too, but I think there's a majority of people that are like you and me that have questions, and some people that have so many questions, we are in effect silenced, because asking questions is not what the mainstream media wants you to ask, for sure. If you don't believe their narrative, then if you ask a question, they'll cast you as a racist or a bigot or whatever it is right away. And I felt some of that in social media, and I felt some of that, some of my opinions, which aren't even really that opinionated. They're just questions.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. I'm with you on some of the things you're sharing. If I could bring us back to the original question, it was, what did you learn about empathy and patience?
So, yes.
And working with someone that's disabled.
Thank you so much for bringing me back. So I remember I stayed and I worked with him between 12 and 18 years old for 6 years. And we stayed friends to this day. And I'm telling you, you should probably, somebody needs to do it. And he was interviewed already by TV here in Israel. So he's like, a movie should be made about him. And he is, I don't even know exactly to describe the disability that he has, but you can tell immediately that he is a person with disability, according to his appearance. And sometimes people would walk to me and say, we don't want to talk to him, we only want to talk to you. Or we're not paying him, we're paying you. And it brings tears to my eyes because, and I even remember then we would go to the mall together and people would look at us like it would, and I would, would walk with my head up straight and, continue walking. And I didn't make a big deal out of it. It's just that I was once again struck. Why is it happening? And trust me, I'm doing that mistake myself. I remember, and I will give you a silly or not a big deal of an example, but in Israel, my favorite chef in Israel is called Eyal Sheni. And he's known to be like the tomato chef or cauliflower chef. He has different types of names. And his whole philosophy in food is that it shouldn't be complicated and you can enjoy a tomato on its own. And he was a judge in one of the food reality shows, and that was the first reality show on TV that I saw that wasn't, putting down or criticizing and saying nasty things, creating this yellow press type of tension. That was completely opposite. It was very uplifting, inspiring. The judges would always compliment. They would offer their feedback, but in a not demeaning way, not in a patronizing way. And when I heard this chef for the first time, and he would talk, this tomato that walked in while it was raining, I thought that he was crazy and snobbish and distant. And so I also judged him. Why? Because he wasn't, I didn't recognize his language. I didn't recognize It was different. And I remember when I went to his restaurant for the first time and I tasted his bread salad, I closed my eyes and I started talking like him. Oh my God, I can now see that tomato walking in the field while it was raining. So I got it because of his... And, you would come to his restaurant, they wouldn't even have plates. And if you ask for salt, the waiter would bring with their bare hands, they would go to this pile of salt and put a pinch of salt on your table. So the opposite of fancy. Even on the prices, he was criticized that he brings very simple food to the table, but highly priced. And I think that it's very valid, even if you bring the cauliflower, but I didn't think that I loved cauliflower until I tasted his cauliflower. And then the way he brought this cauliflower to the table, and it's basic, no extra whatever BS. I just stopped myself not to swear again. And I recently wrote a post about it and sort of remembered that I also do that mistake. I also judge because we're so exposed to so much information. So of course we need to have the systems, the filters that will help us digest all this information.
Mhm.
So we're used to label, right? It's just that I think it's okay. And let's add, just like I was taught by businessmen, don't say yes, but say yes, and. And
I love it.
and
I love it. You know what? You say the word but to me, but is like the biggest barrier. It's like a negator.
yeah,
It's just, to me, you rarely catch me say the word but because I've intentionally tried to say and, to be open to the possibility that two opposing
yeah,
things can be true at the same time.
exactly.
So I love the idea of yes and.
And for how long have you been
Uh,
practicing that? Because I'm still
Probably
sometimes it slips to this day.
the first time I heard it was from an executive at a company called Red Hat here in the United States. I was coaching this company. I met a lady. Her name was Anna. She was the president of the board that I was coaching, and she showed up, and her platform at her first board meeting as president was yes and. And I heard that the first time in October of 2018. And when she took over in 2019, I started to hear it more often. And now it's just part of my everyday vocabulary. I love the yes and. So her influence on me for the last 8
Yeah.
years, 2000 or last 6 years, yes and has been in the vocabulary. All right, I think it might even be one of those things that's critical to being an eternal optimist. Is being
Right?
able to find joy and happiness in something, even though it could be the most challenging thing.
Yes.
Because I would say that the most challenging things, yeah, they're hard in the moment, but if you expand your timeline, those hard things lead to some of the greatest joys in our lives.
Yes. On
And
and
and speaking of that, in our pre-interview, you had shared a couple of thoughts, and I wanted to kind of explore those with you. One of the things that was important to you, I wrote down were the words, "It's impossible."
oh,
So I'm curious if you could unpack for us a little bit the phrase "It's impossible" and what that may have meant and means to you in your life, Dina.
so since I became a mother 6.5 years ago, just before I actually gave birth, I was recommended by an oil and gas analyst, which was very funny, based out of London, to do this prep course for birth because he was doing it with his wife, and it's called Hypnobirthing.
Okay.
Maybe you've heard of it. And that was my introduction to sort of mindfulness. Even though
Okay.
I practiced yoga for many years, and I was, so with that with that teaching of hypnobirthing, the philosophy is it's not against medicine. So we're not going to that extreme of only natural, because sometimes you need an intervention of doctors, but we want to equip you with the knowledge and give you the tools because your body knows what to do for 9 months. So why do you think that the last minute when you give birth, it wouldn't know what to do? And I gave birth to my son a month ahead of schedule, and my water broke in my last class in that course. I know.
Hold on a second. Hold on. Pause. I want to take a microscope and look at that moment. What was that? I've never asked a woman this other than my wife, so she shared it with me. But I'm curious.
Yeah.
Your water broke when you were in a class?
You're such a good.
What was that like?
You were such a good student that I'm so happy that it happened this way because it was a month ahead of schedule. And I was there with my teacher and with the father of my child. And obviously I was about to panic. Again, I was calm. I stood up and I said, my water just broke. She said, okay. She didn't get up. I remember that. She didn't get up. She kept on sitting, which was so important, I think, in my eyes, because imagine if she would get up and start running with me to the bathroom and checking, and it would create
Yeah.
a different, sense of like, anyway. So
Yeah. Like if she's like stressed and nervous and frantic and just kind of anxious, then yeah, I'd like that she was calm. That's really
she
cool.
was super
Uh,
calm, told me what to do. I went to the bathroom, checked that the water was clear, and then I came back, and she gave me instructions and said, okay, so it's happening for you now, and go to the hospital.
okay.
And I went, and I had the like.
Did you drive yourself to the hospital or take a taxi or?
I went with my then partner, and he would stop the
Okay.
car 3 times, like within 15 minutes, because he would always had to, release himself. He was much more stressed, and I just put typical movie type of setting stories. I was calming him down, and I just put the music, the meditation, and I was focusing. And when we got to the hospital, the first doctor that checked me, she wanted to admit me to the hospital and wanted to give me shot that expedites the delivery.
Okay.
And I learned in that course that you should ask questions. You should, why?
Okay.
And again, and by the way, people sometimes interpret question as a questioning, but it's not.
Yeah, I know, right?
Just raising a question. So when I raised these questions, she was very determined in her own vision. And I got up and I said, I'm not going to do this. And I just stepped outside, and my then partner told her, just give her a chance. Give her a chance. So he was the mediator in this case. And then I was walking outside because and I'm sorry if I'm too graphic here or going into too much details, but the opening wasn't enough. It was like 1 centimeter. Anyway, so it wasn't enough. But when I came back for the second checkup, there was a shift in doctor's shift. And and a new doctor checked me, and she said, okay, you're more advanced. It's 3. That's it.
It's the dilation we're talking about here.
Yes. So now you're going to the delivery.
It's like once you've been around childbirth and once you have kids, it's like none of this stuff makes me queasy or nervous or anxious anymore.
Yeah.
It's like once you've seen a human come out of a body,
right?
And I've seen it 3 times. I've seen it natural. I've seen it with all the medications, and I've seen it C-section. So this is easy to talk about this nowadays for me. I hope the listeners are taking a breath if this is tough. But I love the detail because it helps paint the picture. So please continue. This is good.
Okay, wow. 3 children. How do I do that? I have 1, and I'm like, phew. So
it's a whole different bag of worms when you're the boy on the boy side of things, watching, because the pain you're experiencing is more of how can I help? What do I do? I mean, it's kind of a helpless feeling, and it's just how can I help to even try to understand and comprehend what is actually happening with my wife right now, because she was in, as you know, excruciating pain. And the first kid for us was 24 hours or 23 and a half hours of labor. So it was like a tough time. So I'm totally with you here. So,
wow.
Your partner's like, give her some time. You go back in for the second time now. So
and she sends me to the delivery room because what do you call it again? The dilation was, yes.
Yeah, the dilation is advanced, I suppose, or advancing.
Yes, the third, 3 out of 10. So I went up, and the nurse asked me, 1 to 10, what is the pain that I feel? And I said, I don't feel any pain. And she said, okay. So
you're a superhuman. I did not. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a superhuman on our show today. I don't feel any pain. I'm 3 inches dilated. Oh my God. Okay.
It's just, again, the tools that we got at the course. And when you work with your mind, it's amazing what you can achieve. Seriously. So I said, I don't feel pain. I feel pressure. She said, okay,
Yes.
what pressure? So I said something, and then she said, okay, we want to now monitor the baby's heartbeat. And she gave me this huge ball to sit, like it's like a physio type of ball. You know, you see it in gyms a lot, in a gym, like, you know.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yep.
And
One of those giant balls you sit
yeah,
on
for
for
exercise.
lower body stability. And
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, and I was sitting on that and because I was constantly moving and I was listening to that meditation with my eyes closed, 15 minutes, it wasn't stable measurement. So she said, okay, you need to continue doing it. And I ended up doing it for 50 minutes. And as I
Okay.
was sitting on that ball and meditating at some point, and I do remember that, but I'm telling you because my sister was there with me as well, and she says that all of a sudden, with my eyes closed, I was very quiet. I lift my right fist up and I say, I can do it. I can.
Nice.
And
Nice.
they said, of course you can do it, of course. And then finally we finished with the checkup, and I really wanted to take a shower. She said, okay, before you do that, let me check. And she said, oh my God, Dina, you're in full, again, dilation.
Full dilation. Okay. So it's time.
And I didn't make a sound. And so I didn't get a epidural. And I didn't expect to
Wow.
talk about it. So I didn't make a sound, and she was very surprised. She checked twice, and I went into the pushing phase. So and basically 2 hours later, my son was born, and he was healthy, and he is healthy. Thank God. I felt that I won the Oscars, and everybody around.
Yes.
And everybody around us were stressing because he was born a month ahead of schedule. And thank God he's
Yes.
healthy. Though, yeah, what happened next was difficult. As you know, you have this euphoria, and then you come home. And
Yes. Well, Dina, what was that when after the 2 hours of the pushing and the labor, and now your son is born?
yes,
If you can recall, what was your first feeling that you felt after he was born? Just take us from that moment, if you can recall. What was that like for you after he was born?
I felt closer to God.
Uh,
Yeah.
in what way?
I think I was given a couple of gifts. And one of them is, by the way, Optimist, positive.
Mm.
It's a gift, because and another gift that I got is my strong intuition. And unfortunately, for many years as growing up, I would learn how to unplug it. And now I can explain it because my son, I recognize myself in my son, and he's 6.5, and that's the age where you deal with tantrums. And obviously, I researched a lot, and I found Dr. Becky Kennedy. You probably have heard about her.
That Good Inside
Good
book
and
and
serious.
her
Yes,
podcast has been one of the most impactful things in my parenting
yes.
in the last year.
Oh my
So
God.
yeah, love it. I listened to her book in August of 2023, year ago. So I guess 11 months ago. Major impact on our
Oh
lives.
my God.
So I'm so glad you brought her up. Yeah.
So I haven't read her book, but I saw her interview with Oprah, and then I joined her community, and I did several workshops. And now I sense a lot. I often thought that was too sensitive, or I'm too much, but it's just that I'm because of my strong intuition, I feel a lot, and I sense a lot. And it's called, as according to Dr. Becky, it's called a deeply feeling kid. And
Deeply feeling. Okay.
DFK, as she said, the acronym. And oh boy, now I understand through my son, I understand what was happening to me as I was growing up and the places where I would learn how to switch off my feelings. So, speaking of intuition, it's being, not going against your feelings, but embracing them.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And where was I? Because of
Well, we were at the moment of birth, and you realized that
yeah,
there were some gifts that you had in that moment. Positive thinking and optimism is there, or the idea you just
yes,
shared that.
intuition, and I felt
Mm-hmm.
my intuition really resurfaced for me. That was my journey to, I say, enough of the. I mean, now when I think, thanks to your questions, now when I think about it, it's time to get more conscious. I didn't realize
More
I had the
conscious.
power. I didn't realize, what do you mean it's not necessarily, I shouldn't do it in this particular way. I mean, I was, and mind you, I grew up in with parents, and I was myself, in my passport to this day, the place of birth, it says USSR. So the Soviet Union type of mentality, which
Okay.
my father is super allergic to. This is why he wanted to leave. And his dream country is US, by the way. he, he
Good.
Again, I'm jumping here with
No,
subject.
that was a great. Transparent story of that challenging time, having your son, a month early, and everything that happened there, and the gift that came from it. So thank you for that. That was awesome. Thank you, Dina.
Thank you. Yeah, wow.
Let me go to, for a little while, a little bit about you professionally. I know that you are a professional strategist, and you serve. Can you unpack that a little? What does intention and strategy? What does that mean to you in a professional sense?
So, the way I got to strategy was not the typical way. It was thanks to the feedback that I've received from my clients and the companies that I worked with. And when I became a mom, I decided to leave the biggest oil and gas company I used to work for here in Israel.
Okay.
I still in good relationship with them to this day, but it was just like a bit of a golden cage because, the lucrativity and of that company, my role as the head of investor relations, and I made big achievements there. And but anyway, I couldn't go back to that 24/7 after giving birth to my son, just like as per the cliche. And I told you already that I work since I'm 12, so I don't know what it means not to work. I decided to be a stay-at-home mom, and I became independent consultant because of that. So I came to be a business owner again from the back door, I would say, not And I made a lot of mistakes, by the way, because you need to really change the way you think. Because as the employee type of mentality and the business owner, totally different. So my expertise still is investor relations, and by the way, the first project that I worked on when I left that job was an international school for peace for refugees in Greece, built by Israeli Jewish and Israeli Arabs in Greece for refugees from Syria, Afghanistan, Lebanon, Congo, and even Palestine. And because my intention was to get up in the morning and do something good, or be part of projects that do good to this world. So
Yes.
that was my first client. And then through a word of mouth, I didn't have many clients, but I would always work on one project or another. I got clients, a green startup that developed an artificial root system for plants to decide when and how much water to consume, with an investment house in Israel operating in social housing in the UK, an investment house in Lithuania, and then I also worked with a Nasdaq-listed company, an Israeli Nasdaq-listed company in the insurance vertical. And if you take all of the CEOs, managing directors, founders that I worked with, and there was several few, it was like they went into the same room and said exactly, agreed what feedback to provide me with, which was totally identical. And I said, Dina, you asked thought-provoking questions. You totally awakened. And now you completely transformed the way I see my own company. You helped to crystallize the strategy. And one investment banker, by the way, told me, because we were sitting in one room, all men and myself, and with my finger, very quickly, I identified the problems in the business case in one of the companies, and I voiced them. So that banker told me, Dina, you are not an investor relations. You are not the parrot of management. You're a strategist. And all of them kept on saying that word to me. So I'm thinking, okay, I am onto something. And I also, on a very intuitive basis, developed this methodology. I would reverse and I would say, no. I don't want to hear your story, because the chances are you're going to bleep it, bullshit me.
Bleep! Nice, thank you.
And if we may, with your permission, let's reverse it. I will ask you questions. And I would ask non-typical type of questions. And I'm telling you, it worked like magic, because each one of them, and I came to realize as leaders, nobody approaches them and says, unless you're an investor and you make an appointment with an investor, because I sat with investors for the